Shine bright up all night. We're never slowing down. Follow drunk mistakes. We're bound to hit the ground. Gotta keep this feeling, keep on breathing, even if we're slipping away. So I close my eyes and lose myself now. Do it like it's only a day. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. And we don't care about the bad days. For a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. And we don't care about the bad days. For a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this. Young blood made of gold, a mind you can't control. Running wild, can't come down. My head is in the clouds. Gotta keep this feeling, keep on breathing, even if we're slipping away. So I close my eyes and lose myself now. Do it like it's only a day. We got a party for a lifetime. No, we ain't stopping for the sunrise. And we don't care about the bad days. For a second I can feel like this. Make me feel like this.
A salute to my Green Bay Packers amplified unit. What is going on, guys? Welcome to the very first ever GBP Amplified, Packers Amplified, the podcast, previewing week 1, the start of the season. Packers versus the Bears from Chicago. We're going to kick it off the right way with the rivalry. What better way to do this? It is an interesting season. It's a wild season. It is a season of the unknown. For over 3 decades, all BC has known at quarterback is Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And after over 3 decades, that all changes. Snap of a finger, blink of an eye, drop of a hat. Jordan Love now at the helm. Nobody giving us a chance. There's so many that have us dead last in our division, barely winning 7 games, and that's if we're lucky. So there's a lot of naysayers, and for justified reasons. We no longer have the guy anymore, Aaron Rodgers. He took his talents to, well, right here, New York. Go figure. Now, I don't know if I'll do it today, but I'll have my amplified thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, the new Aaron Rodgers that New York City is listening to and looking at, watching, hearing. This is not the Aaron Rodgers that was in Green Bay. A lot of people calling him a straight out fake, a fraud. I have my thoughts on Rodgers. Whether it's today, maybe it's in the review of Game 1 that'll be out Monday morning, because I'll be right back with you talking Green Bay Packers on Monday morning. Whatever the result of this game is, however this game went down, I will review it from top to bottom, start to finish, beginning to end. And hopefully we don't got to get amplified in a negative way. Hopefully it's a good game for us. But there's a lot of thoughts that we have on Aaron Rodgers. Some of this was brought on, of course, from the Packers organization, but a lot of it was brought on by the diva qualities of Aaron Rodgers. He's saying all the right things now. He's doing all the right things, showing up to all the right places. But it's Broadway. It's New York City. You got to put on your best performance. That's Rodgers. You know what? That's looking to the past. Right now, we look to the future. And the future is, whether we like it or not, we're going to find out a lot about this kid, Jordan Love. So we're going to preview the Packers and the Bears. Again, welcome to everybody, the first ever podcast on the channel. We talk a lot of professional wrestling on this channel. I hope to do Yankees in the future, but we thought that it was a good time now, 2023 season, to start covering the Packers. I wanted to do this for a while now. We do a lot of traveling, and there's a lot of different scenarios that wouldn't allow me to do this, but in podcast form, even if you can't watch via the YouTube platform, lock in the earbuds, go about your chores, go about your travels, go about your business, and you can still listen to the podcast, man. If you are a die-hard, tried-and-true Green Bay Packer fan, love to have you. If you're not a Packer fan, maybe you're just a fan of the BC Amplified channel, salute. Thanks for joining. Maybe you'll become a Packer fan, right? I'm going to go over a lot of keynotes. We're going to have the Amplified notes coming up. Those are just some interesting tidbits on this game coming up this weekend. And then we have some of the bigger headlines that we should probably go over first. Injury-wise, for instance, Christian Watson out. That's right. You're thinking, hold on. This is week 1. We're putting Jordan Love out there for the first time, starting for the Green Bay Packers to start a season. And our star receiver is not even playing with him. That's exactly what I am telling you. Christian Watson is out with a hamstring injury. Sound familiar? We've had a few players, a few of them, wide receivers, out with hamstring injuries. Watson is definitely out. However, here's the interesting tidbit. No practice squad receivers were placed on the game day roster. There was no elevators from the practice squad receiver-wise. So that tells us that Romeo Doubs is in for this Sunday's game. Romeo, of course, missed the past couple of weeks with his own hamstring injury. So it's almost like you can't win here, man. Those soft tissue injuries that are nagging a lot of organizations these days, it's already wreaked havoc on the Green Bay Packers. But Romeo looks to anyway be playing because, again, we didn't elevate anybody else. The problem with that is he just got back to practice on Thursday. So you only have a couple of days. You had 1 day of practice. So it'll be interesting to see the play time and the play calls with Romeo in the lineup when he is in there. The thought of not having Watson and Romeo on opening day with Jordan at the helm is just inconceivable. Thankfully, we got at least one of them in there. But there's still so many question marks with our receivers. Of course, he's in there. Romeo will be in there with the rookies Jaden Reed and Malik Heath. It's a question mark after a question mark after a question mark. Your quarterback, your receivers. The light at the end of the tunnel is actually going to be your running backs because we're going to have Aaron Jones back in there at the 1 spot and AJ Dillon back in there at the number 2. Now, there's been trade talks regarding Jonathan Taylor of the Colts. Dillon recently breaking his silence, and AJ Dillon says, I laugh at those talks. I'm not even thinking about that. When contract talks roll around in a serious way, that's when I will do the talking. Right now, I'm focused on week number 1. I'm focused on the Bears. I'm focused on rocking it with Aaron Jones, 33, he says. So, AJ Dillon is not being sidetracked by all these talks. And I honestly think that would be a massive mistake anyway. This is one of the best 1-2 punches in the National Football League with Jones and Dillon. And by the way, getting back to Jordan Love and kind of the injury report, David Bakhtiari is going to be playing Sunday. Now, he's had a string of injuries over the past couple of years. Of course, that was Aaron Rodgers' right-hand man. He would have loved to have brought Bakhtiari over to New York. Not happening. Thank goodness for contracts in this situation. But David will be in there protecting and playing with Jordan and protecting Jordan to the most amplified of measures. This dude is great at his position. When he is in the lineup, the Packers are just better. It's just some of those players, when they're in the lineup, they're better. David Bakhtiari, one of those players. So when I heard he was definitely playing, because he's missed a couple weeks of practice just recently, just like Romeo Dobbs. You have several players, man, key players that have missed a lot of practice tail end going into the regular season. So when I say question marks, I think that's the biggest thing going into Sunday's game against Chicago. It is one big question mark after question mark after question mark, from the quarterback to the receivers to our line. It's interesting. I can't remember this just feeling all over the place at the start of a season, man. But this is kind of where we're at. We'll let the players kind of speak for themselves a little bit as well. We'll go to Jordan Love. Jordan Love is asked about going into this rivalry with Chicago, and he says he's excited to get it going, excited to play.
Yeah, and I'm excited for it. It's always exciting to open the season, get the first game on rolling. But for an NFC opponent, rivalry game, it'll be very exciting playing there in their stadium. So I'm sure it'll be a packed house. Everybody will be excited for week one and ready to put on a show.
So the starting quarterback of the Packers, Jordan Love, I got to get used to saying that, man. He was also asked about Aaron Jones as a receiver. Now, we've seen some really good plays over the past couple of years with the Jones receiving that ball. We've also seen some massive drops that could have been something special, probably should have been something special. So it was actually a good question asked to Jordan Love. What about Aaron Jones going into that spot a little bit more this year? With Watson out, with the question mark on Dobbs, with all the rookies upcoming, what about Jones, who can obviously run with the ball once he's got it and is decent catching it? What about him doing more in the receiver role? This is what Jordan Love has to say.
It's been good. It's been something that we've been working on, but he's an explosive player in the run game and the pass game, so it's definitely a guy we got to get the ball to, get the ball in his hands, and let him go do what he does, make plays. But it's just one thing we got to keep working on. Obviously he doesn't catch a lot of passes and do things in practice, but the more we can get him, running routes, doing things that he'll do in the game is awesome. But the more we can use him, the better.
See, now that's a little bit contradictory because he says, yeah, it'd be great to do such. He's an explosive player, was his words, which we all know is to be true. But when he admits that we haven't been doing a lot with him in practice in that role, he hasn't been catching a lot of balls in practice in that role, but it's something that we got to look to do in the future. Well, that should have already been done. Whether you have Christian Watson in this lineup or not, whether you have Christian Watson and Dobbs, whether you have Watson, Dobbs, and Devontae Adams back on the roster. Wishful thinking. Put that on the Christmas list. It doesn't matter who you have on the lineup. Aaron Jones should be catching a lot more passes. It's that explosive line between receiver and running back, and you want to blur that line. And what better way to blur it than with an explosive player like Jones? The second he gets that little 4-yard slot pass, he's gone off to the races. You put Jones out to the flat 5 yards, let him get that ball, and let him work his magic. Why are you not doing more of that in practice? Like, at least Jordan Love admits it. But you can't say, yeah, he's an explosive player. It would work really well. It's something we should start to do more. But we're really not doing that in practice. So it's just about reps. Well, if it's about reps, do it! Come on, man. This should be something ready to launch, catapult to the league on week 1 against the Bears. Aaron Jones, you should have about 9, 12, 15 plays for Aaron Jones to catch a ball. So I thought it was a really good question. It's something that you are going to need to do this year, especially with Jordan Love. Brett Favre started doing it a lot more toward the end of his Packers career and even with the Jets. But a lot of these dink and dank passes, right? 3 yards here, 5 yards here, 6 yards here. You get so used to Rodgers over the years doing these 20, 30, 40, 50-yard bombs or Hail Marys. It's not the case. These little dinkers are where it's at sometimes. And when I say sometimes, I mean a lot. They're phasing out the role of running back, right? They don't look at it as a prestigious role anymore when it couldn't be farther from the truth. The running back is the one going to get you that extra yard, 2, 3, 4. You can't just keep driving your quarterback head first into the quarterback sneak. Eventually that's going to catch up to these quarterbacks. And you're not always going to collect a first down just by passing 3 and outs. It's not going to happen. Your running back is crucial. Just because they don't have the longevity in the league like they do with receivers, I understand. There's still a crucial element to success. And I don't see that ever changing. So if you can make them more dangerous by allowing them more catches and then yards after the catch, do it. If you have somebody like Aaron Jones, do it. This should have been done in practice, not waiting for week 1 to say, hey, we lost this by 10 points, but if we used Aaron Jones a little bit more in that slot, if we just do a little dink 5-yarders over to Aaron Jones, he could have gotten 15 here, 20 here. He could have got the easy first down here, put us in the red zone here. This is what I mean. You have to utilize these players to the best of not just their abilities, but to the best of the organization's usage. You know, every week 33 steps out onto that field, you got to make sure your opponents are on their toes. They don't know if he's running it. They don't know if he's catching it. They don't know if he's going to put on that massive block that leads to that touchdown. He can do it all. He's so versatile. Jordan Love answered this question beautifully at first, right? Yeah, he's an explosive player. Makes the most sense. I think that'll help us big time. Jones receiving more, especially with our question marks on our receivers. There's just one problem, Jordan Love says. We haven't been doing that in practice. Come on, man. You know, these are the little things that aren't so little, you know? The little things like Aaron Rodgers always calling all of our timeouts. When he's on the line, he's ready, just hike the ball. At this point, we take the 3 and out. We'll take the 5-yard penalty. Please do not take a timeout. And Aaron Rodgers would use them all. McCarthy had no control over that. There's Rodgers every other play calling all of our timeouts. You know, and some people said, oh, it's not a big deal. Rodgers didn't see what he liked. Oh, Rodgers just wants to, you know, settle everything down. Rodgers wants this. Rodgers wants that. Well, you know, people in hell want ice water. Can't always get what you want. Rodgers needs to know those timeouts, those are very, very valuable. Treat them like gold. And no, by the time we needed them in really dire situations, we didn't have those timeouts. A lot of people looked at that as a little thing. That's a big thing. These are things that can win you games, or at least position yourself to win these games. And these are the things. It's a game of inches, right? It's a game of what may seem as minuscule decisions, but there's so much more massive in the grander scheme. This is one of those things. Make sure that everybody is being utilized to the most amplified of their abilities. All right, that's my side rant on that. Sticking with Jordan Love, one more sound bite for you. This was a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit fun. Jordan Love was asked if Christian Watson was to play this week, which again, he is not. He has already been ruled out of Sunday's game. But if Christian Watson was to play, and Matt LaFleur, head coach for the Packers, called the same play that he called during the opener of last year. You guys remember Rodgers to Watson to start the year off last year. And Watson dropped the ball. Just dropped it. There's no other way to say it. I wish I could sugarcoat it a little bit, make Watson sound a little better, maybe throw some jabs over at Rodgers. There's nothing I can do. Watson just dropped the ball, and it set the tone for the rest of the year because, guys, that's exactly what it did. It set the tone. You really felt that play throughout the season. Am I right? Most Packer fans know what I'm talking about because it just wasn't our year. We never felt like we were on. We never felt like we had momentum. I'm not just blaming Watson, by the way, but I'm saying that play never really left us. It set the tone for the rest of the season. And it's just one of those things you just can't get back. So Jordan Love was asked, what if LaFleur went right back to Watson and did it all again? And this was Jordan Love's response.
I think Christian will make it right this time and go score a touchdown for sure. But you never know. With a guy with speed like that, he's always a threat. Take that first play to the house. So you always got to be ready for that as a defense. It's always there. I'm always encouraging him to take some shots.
So there you go, man. He says, I think Christian Watson would make it right this time, and he would go and score a touchdown. he said, I'm always willing to take those shots. So LaFleur calls these plays. If Matt LaFleur calls these plays, Jordan Love is all about it. That's good to know. Not going to question it. Again, if Jordan Love becomes something special in this league, you just hope he doesn't develop that diva mentality. Brett Favre had that after a while. Aaron Rodgers got it even more. And you hope that Jordan Love, who is just a level-headed kid, nobody's got a real bad thing to say about this dude. And you just hope that he does this the right way throughout his career, because what happens is you get that diva mentality, you start arguing with the coaches more, you start thinking you know better, start calling your own shots, and before you know it, it's not ending well. And you spent a whole career somewhere, and you look what happened with Brett Favre. You look what happened with Aaron Rodgers. You don't want to see it the third time, but that's getting way ahead of ourselves. Is Jordan Love going to have a 14, 15, 16-year career here? 3 years playing the backup. Man, this story is ever so familiar, right? Favre, Rodgers, Love, Rodgers, man. If you listen to Colin Cowherd and those, man, they're saying that this guy's got no juice from what they're hearing from people inside those walls. I think it's time for Jordan Love to turn up that juice, get amplified, and show the world. And there's no better time than week 1 against your rival, the Chicago Bears. Speaking of Matt LaFleur, by the way, I want to get over to him, our head coach. He was asked about the Watson injury and how that affects any changes to game day. This is what Matt LaFleur says.
I think anytime you have injuries, specifically soft tissue, that's something that always sparks a conversation, and you have to do a little digging on. So that's something we'll look at.
So far,
that'll be more towards when we start to put our schedule and plan in place for next offseason.
You've had to prepare for a game plan without Christian, but theoretically that changed quite a bit from what you might have had in mind in camp. How do you recover from that, put together a new plan on short notice?
Well, we still had a whole week to kind of prepare for this, so I wouldn't say that would alter the plan too drastically. I think anytime you're missing one of your better players, I mean, that certainly throws a little curveball to it, but I mean, that happens all the time. Shoot, the Chiefs had to deal with that, last night.
So Matt LaFleur is not hiding behind the injuries, especially to his star wide receiver. He says the Chiefs just had to deal with that with Kelsey. Every team right now has some type of injury to one of their main starters, or at least a nagging injury or something they have to look out for if they're not totally ruled out. And he's saying it's no more than a curveball. And being in this league, you have to be accustomed to those curveballs, know how to call that audible on these curveballs. So he's saying the right words so far, man. We'll see what it all leads to. Guys, this is the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, Week 1 Amplified Notes. That's right. These are some interesting tidbits here. So we'll start off with the first amplified note for Week 1. The Packers have won the last 8 games against the Bears. The last 8 games in a row. We really want to keep that streak going. Let's hit 9 this Sunday. What do you say? Number 2 on the amplified note. Chicago is the favorite in Vegas at a 1.5. And the over-under for total points, 41.5. 41.5. Oof. Well, It is what it is. Nobody's really giving us a chance. However, tidbit number 3 gives us some hope and the amplified notes, because listen to this. It is indeed a questionable Jordan Love and no star receiver in Watson, but Chicago was ranked 29th in total defense last season, with opponents averaging nearly 400 yards per game. So that's the good news. Chicago ranked 29th. There's only 32 teams. Do the math. That's pretty bad. 400 yards on average that opposing offenses have been able to garner. Well, even if your receiving game is off, Aaron Jones and Dillon maybe can mix up for $150 plus, bare minimum. Let's see if we can score a couple touchdowns, just absolutely making them live up to their billing. 29th in the league. Maybe we don't need an Aaron Rodgers or a Brett Favre to win this game. Next tidbit in the amplified notes. This is just mind-boggling. It's the first time since 1992 that someone not named Favre or Rodgers started at QB against the Chicago Bears. Over 30 years, guys. 1992. It's all BC has ever really known quarterback-wise for the Packers. When I first started watching them as a very little BC, it was Don Majkowski. I remember a little bit about Don Majkowski, and I just remember us being one of the worst teams in the league. No offense to Don Majkowski, by the way. And then we just got Brett Favre, and things started to turn around, and obviously 31 happened, and unfortunately that's all we were able to get with Favre. But you know, Rodgers comes into his own, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, a resurgence. We don't need Brett Favre. Aaron Rodgers might be able to carry that torch into another Super Bowl and take us back and make us title town once more. And sure enough, 45 happened. So Jordan Love, next up, right? It's an old saying in baseball, next up. No matter what happens, next up. This is Jordan Love's time, man. But 30 years... we've only known over 30 years, we've only known 2 quarterbacks. How absolutely insane is that? Guys, that's what I'm going to leave you with here. We're already bulking up to about a half an hour on this podcast. It's our first ever, so I'll let you guys go about on your way. But this is going to be a big one. This is going to tell us so many things. Jordan Love, the receivers, our line, our special teams, no Mason Crosby. Our special teams from top to bottom had a huge question mark the past couple of years. Did they rectify at least some of those? Can we turn those question marks into exclamation points? Possibly. Is there any way? And I hope that we can keep the conversation on Jordan Love and our Packers and not necessarily Aaron Rodgers. You know, I teased my thoughts on Rodgers earlier. We might as well end our first ever Packers Amplified, GBP Amplified podcast. We might as well end it the right way. My true feelings on Aaron Rodgers is this. I am so thankful and grateful for that dude to give us another 15 some odd years with this team. Coming off of Brett Favre, most teams will tell you it just doesn't work that way. And I will never take that for granted. I am very thankful, very grateful, and I always will be. And I will say this, watching Aaron Rodgers play is such a treat. It is something amazing because he is so damn good. And I said the same thing about Brett Favre. Even if we're losing a game or missing a playoff, watching Brett Favre play, I still didn't take for granted. I still said I would rather watch Brett Favre play than X. I would rather watch Aaron Rodgers play than Y. I would always find myself saying that because just watching them play the game of football, watching them throw a ball is so much fun because you know it's once in a lifetime. And Favre was so much different than Rodgers and vice versa. So even though we had it back to back, they're still individually once in a lifetime. So I cannot praise Rodgers more. Toward the end of his career, he turned total diva status. And that's where it became even worse of a problem than somehow the Brett Favre situation. And he wasn't happy here anymore. He didn't want to play here anymore. He wanted to take his ball and go, basically. And it got to the point where the Packers organization, and I'm sure most of us fans, we've just had enough. And then we didn't even make the playoffs last year, so then it's like, how much more can we do with this? It's becoming exhausting. And when this becomes exhausting and no longer fun for anybody involved, because the Packers weren't having fun, Rodgers wasn't having fun anymore, and the fans started to not have fun, there's a problem. And sometimes marriages have to end in divorce. I do a lot of pro wrestling on this channel. It is a predominantly pro wrestling channel. And a guy by the name of Phil CM Punk Brooks, he signed with a company called AEW All Elite Wrestling. And from the jump, you could just tell that Phil was just not happy. Phil didn't get along with the locker room. The locker room didn't get along with him. Brooks is known to be a diva. Set in his ways, standoffish is how he's been described. A lot of qualities like Rodgers, actually. And sure enough, it was one problem after another. Now, the writing was on the wall, and Brooks should have probably been fired long before, and he would have been happier, AEW would have been happier, the fans would have been happier. But they kept him around, and what happened was it got worse, and eventually worse. And then recently, there was another brawl backstage at an event, a big event for the company, and it overshadowed once again the event, this brawl. So finally, they had to terminate the contract of this particular wrestler, CM Punk. And it could have been avoided long before, but what happens is you let somebody get their way for so long and be the diva, and before you know it, they start calling the shots, and everybody else around them that's in a higher position, they're too scared to say no. Sound familiar? Watch last season, guys. Watch Aaron Rodgers and how he treated Matt LaFleur, our own coach. Watch how he talked to him. Watch how he would have these tantrums in front of him. Watch how he would start calling all the shots and overriding LaFleur. Man, it doesn't matter if half the time or more he was even right. That's not the position you're in. You're the quarterback. And while you do have more control than ever before as quarterback, and you have a lot more say than ever before, you have to remember who you're talking to. Show a little bit of respect. And this is one of those situations same with McCarthy and Favre. You knew that McCarthy just needed to kind of groom a new quarterback, and it had to be Rodgers. Rodgers-McCarthy had to be what Holmgren and Favre was. And I believe that LaFleur needs his Favre, his Rodgers, and I think that's going to be Jordan Love, or at least we're hoping. But with Rodgers, man, it got to that diva status where it got really bad. And nobody was winning in that situation. Our coach was no longer the coach. He was scared to say anything to Aaron Rodgers. Brian, our GM, Mark, everybody that's over Aaron Rodgers in management, too scared to say anything. And then we didn't even make the playoffs. He's over there hiding out in the dark for a couple of weeks, days, whatever it was. Could be 2 centuries, who knows? This guy's out there in left field with a hockey stick, and then he comes out of the dark, and he says, well, the Packers aren't treating me right. Dude, you just ran away to the dark. You answered none of their calls or nothing when they clearly said they were trying to see where your dome piece was at. You're the one who was questioning retirement. It's not their job to hold your hand. They're not your father. They're the boss. So Aaron Rodgers then goes to New York City. Now I'm in the whole tri-state. I'm telling you, I'm gauging New York City with Aaron Rodgers. And let me tell you, this is not the Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And New York is eating it up, right? Oh, this is the Rodgers that should have been in Green Bay, but the marriage was so bad it had to end in divorce. No, this is a fake Aaron Rodgers. Again, that's not even shade. This is not Aaron Rodgers. This is a dude who heard everything that was said about him in Green Bay, all the faults, all the problems, not being a good teammate and like hanging out. You don't gotta go out for a beer with the boys every single Friday night or after a practice, hang out and play Madden or go for a jog. I don't know why you would after practice, but you get my point. You ain't gotta hang out every day after practice. but at least have some semblance of a relationship. And you heard one story after another of Rodgers just being standoffish and not really connecting, not having any real relationships other than like a Bakhtiari and such, a couple of people here and there. And then he goes to the Jets, and everything that was said negatively about him in Green Bay, all of a sudden he corrects it for New York. People change. Whether you like to believe it or not, they do. There's good in people. When they do bad and they know better and they don't want to do it again, they will change. That's the good news. They don't change that fast. Not when you have the mentality and the psychology of Aaron Rodgers. He knows what he's doing. He's a smart dude. He's manipulating New York City. He's manipulating Green Bay fans probably in the process. Oh, Aaron Rodgers is such a nice guy now. No. Stop. And to each their own. That's the Jets' problem now. But this is the first podcast of Packers Amplified. GBP Amplified. And we're not going to sugarcoat on this podcast. I have no desire to start a Green Bay Packer podcast and just sugarcoat or just kind of dance around the lines instead of crossing them. No, absolutely not. To start this podcast off the right way, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. In this case, it's Aaron Rodgers. And while we don't want to look to the past, we want to look to the future. We have to at least get that out of the way so that we go forward. If anybody ever says, BC, what were your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? I am grateful for him, thankful for him. One of the best players I've ever seen play that position. And it's a shame that it had to end this way in Green Bay. But watching him throw a ball, I'll never forget it. It's like one of those like movie slow motion sequences, you know, and the music is playing, dun 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 dun, and the ball is slowly in the air. Every time Aaron Rodgers throws the ball, that's just kind of everything just goes into slow motion. That's how beautiful it is. And I appreciate everything he's done for us. I wish it could have been more and not just individually, like 4 MVPs, maybe 4 Super Bowls would have been better. Perhaps if there was more chemistry, there would have been that. But I'm forever grateful and thankful for Aaron Rodgers. But if you think that I'm buying into any of this BS, and again, being in New York, I'm seeing a lot more of it than maybe other Green Bay Packer tried and true. And it's absolutely nauseating. It's exhausting to see such a fraudulent performance nonstop. But it's Broadway. It's New York, and Rodgers knew what he was doing, right? Following in the footsteps of Broadway Joe Namath. So that's my thoughts on it, man. It might sound scathing, but I respect the dude for what he did. I'm thankful. I'm grateful. I appreciate. And throwing that ball was a thing of magic. But this is not the Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are going to find out. The Jets are going to find out as the season goes on. Justin know who the hell Aaron Rodgers is. Whether that's good or bad in their eyes, that's in the eyes of the beholder, right? That's their prerogative. That's their conclusion to jump to. But they're going to find out Aaron Rodgers quickly, man. Especially if things go off the rails. Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get the diva of all divas. But now it's time to look to the future, man. The Packers and the Bears. I hope I set it up pretty damn good for you guys. Hopefully it was at least entertaining as well. Hopefully some like-minded Green Bay Packer fans were able to find this podcast, and hopefully we can do this rocking out even bigger and better going forward. I'll be back with you guys talking Green Bay Packers on Monday morning. By Monday, maybe Sunday night, but by Monday morning I'll have the full review of this game. We're going to get amplified, the positives and the negatives, the good, the bad, and the ugly of week 1. Go, Pack, go! Listen, I don't care if it's Jordan Love's first year or not. I don't care if nobody's giving us a chance. Let's bring another one back to Title Town. What do you say? Until next time, and there will be that next time. BC saying check you. Top guys, we're out. Peace.